Hello everyone, and thank you for being here for us and us being here for you. In the following presentations, I'm going to give you 4 guys from the trenches of Resco software development. We'll show you what we develop for you, how we do it and why. The productivity unleashed, that's the topic for today's presentation and today's conference. And before we go deep into what we introduce in the latest release, I want to take a broader view of what we are doing and why we are doing it. So, first of all, Resco is all about crafting mobile-first native user experiences with what I think most of you already know, Mobile App Development Toolkit, which is your good old known Resco suite, which is mobile CRM, Woodford, and the admin tools. So, we'll be talking about our strategy, how do we do it, how we enable productivity. So first, the most important pillar is a no-code. It's great if you build an app as an app maker, and if it just works, right? It's great if you just open something and it works, and that's what we like, the no-code. So it works by convention. For example, in Resco, if you just have some latitude and longitude fields in your record, an entity, it automatically can be flipped into a map. That's great if it works, right? If it doesn't, you can have a lot of options for configuration. And you know Woodford, it's a ton of things to configure. Sometimes they can be misleading, sometimes they can be very intuitive. And we are working on that to make it better. The next step is the low code, and that's our rules. In Woodford, you get a lot of options where you can plug in your own business logic, whether it's in the forms, in the views, in the route planner, in the scheduler, and a lot of other components. What we also introduced in the questionnaires is even simpler rules called smart rules. That's something that we all want to bring also into Woodford. When low code is not enough, that's something that I adapt, a little code. But what is good is that you don't have to throw all the low code out of the window if you just want to add simple functionality there. So ideally, you can invoke from your rules some small, compact, reusable pieces of code in JavaScript that just does the stuff for you, and then keep most of your logic in a low code platform. And then, when this is not enough, we go to pro code. For us in Resco, it's very important to have really good connection to you, our partners and our customers, and understand what you do. We specialize in mobility, so for us it's very important to learn. That's why if you write the support cases in Resco, you get the questions, but why do you want to do that? How exactly are you doing? What's your process? This is because we want to learn, we find the patterns, what's common in the mobile applications, we simplify it, and we try to empower you to do more and more with less code approaches. So ideally, most of things just work out of the box. Some things you have to code, some things you have to pro code. But the less, the better. So this is what we do. This is what we have on our minds when we are introducing any feature. So our main focus areas are now, of course, our rule engine, so you can do more without coding. Then it is offline and sync, where I think we are really the leading provider. We get the best thing to offer. And there's configuration, of course, because if you configure, you want to be in control, you want to see what you're configuring. So we are introducing tools that show you what's your data model. We are trying to focus on the speed, and we want to bring the experiences that gives you suggestions and validates what you do. And with that, it's UI and UX. It would be great if you just don't have to know what is HTML, what is CSS. It should be great by default. It should be mobile first, and because that's our specialty. Power Platform is great, but it's for all use cases. It's for all users in back office, front office, but Resco, it should be great for mobile, very responsive. And ideally, you don't have to configure UI. You don't have to choose how it should look like. Configure. You should choose from the gallery. So that's what we are bringing. More and more options just to choose what you want the app to look like, not configure. And of course, AI. So we in Resco are strong believers in AI, but something that I would call the ambient AI. I mean, I don't want to argue with my app what to do. What I want to do is to do smart things for me without me even knowing. So this kind of ambient AI in the backhand that just do things for me. So what we are looking at is, of course, the Copilot experience, because you have to have Copilot everywhere, right? And then smart features like OCR, which we'll be talking slightly later, the routing, AI enhancement, and also the photo editor that does things for you. Things like that. So this is where we are looking at. And, okay, I'll give the word to Martin Hrebenak, our support specialist, who will tell you more about what's new in Woodford. Give him an applause.
Hello everyone, I'm Martin, and I would like to talk to you for a few minutes about Woodford. I believe almost all of you have either came across or intensively worked with Woodford, but I believe some of you didn't have a chance to work with it yet. So what exactly is Woodford? For me, it's like a powerful brain in the center of our mobile app development toolkit. It's a configuration tool that really helps you build almost countless combination of the variations of your application that you will want to deliver to your clients based on their demands. So right after the launch, when you access Woodford, you have a pretty powerful project management. You can create project, you can derive project, you can clone project, you can assign the roles to them, business units. You can create the separate apps, which is basically like batches of projects which customer then just choose from during a synchronization. You have a device control where you can set your basic device policies. You can set the rules when should the application be wiped, when it should be locked, or you can just do it manually on demand if the situation needs to. Then you have a pretty intuitive license management where you can enable or disable licenses for the user, or you can just leave this to auto-assign license functionality. There are more functions before you launch the project, but only after you launch a project, you are able to see a vast number of functionalities that Woodford provides. For example, the first thing you might want to do is to set the brand color. Thanks to the algorithm by Material Design, you just have to set one brand color, and Woodford will automatically calculate the whole color palette for your whole application, so you don't have to choose the color for each element in the application, and it will do it for a light and a dark mode also. Next thing, you might want to set some form and views in a form and view editor. You will spend some time in these places, believe me. And you can configure the looks of your views and forms, and you can also configure the logic, which is provided by the simple yet complex set of low-code rules. If the rules aren't enough, you can configure your offline HTML or custom JavaScript, or you can set the sync filters so you can ensure that the users won't be slowed down by any unnecessary data. Or you can just create some dashboards in a dashboard configurator to just keep things in place. And trust me, if I was here speaking about every functionality that Woodford provides, we would be here for hours. So let's talk about the rules. As I said, it's a low-code business logic. You just have to know a few simple coding principles to work with it. You can use various triggers. For example, you can execute your rules when you are loading the record, or when you do some data change, or you might want to do some validation during a saving phase of the record. You can control the visual components. You can enable, disable fields. You can set the visibility. You can manipulate the data as you go. You can do some fetches. You can fetch the records from other entities, and you can use the data in this record. You can create a whole new record in the background and save it. Or you can do either the mathematical operations there if the situation needs it. And many, many more with just the simple understanding of if, then, else logic. But sometimes your goals are just slightly bigger than our rules engine, and that's where the JS Bridge comes into play. JS Bridge is our API that enables you to integrate JavaScript into application. And you can create either just small utility functions that you can reuse and use them in various places in the application, or you can create really JavaScript heavy codes for the really specific situations, or you can, if the situation needs it, then you can create either the whole new HTML page which replaces the whole UI of the forms. In a few days, it will be 5 years I'm working in Resco at the support department, supporting you. And one thing that never stops to amaze me is that with how many really creative use cases and solutions you can come up with that really puts our rules engine and the JS bridge into the test. And almost every time you, maybe with our help, are able to deliver to client exactly what they want. And also during these 5 years, I was able to witness many improvements done to Woodford. Sometimes it's a whole new functionality, sometimes it's just the enhancement of existing functionalities. But this gave me the insight, this gave me the basic idea that we really listen to our customers and we are always trying to improve your day-to-day experience with Woodford. So now let's talk about some of these new functionalities. And let's talk about new HTML and XML editor. We all know that you can write your code even in a notepad. And we all know at least one crazy person that might just do that. But to be really effective while writing a code, you almost every time need some modern functionalities that modern coding editors provide. For example, color-themed code or suggestions. And now we bring you the modernized code editor inside the offline HTML part of the Woodford. So now you don't have to download any external IDEs. I mean, if it's your main device, you probably will. But if you are on some other device, you don't have to install any Visual Studio or anything to effectively edit and rewrite your code. Also, some of you might prefer to edit your rules via XML. Maybe you are doing some bulk changes. And that's when it's really effective to do it in XML. So we bring you also the direct XML editor. Now directly inside the rules engine, you can choose to open the XML editor and directly edit the whole rules, set of rules. So you don't have to, you don't have to export them, edit them, import them again, and continue to work. The last year, we brought you the new modernized form editor, and this year we are bringing you new modernized view editor. As you can see, this is not a new editor. This is the one that you've been working with for the last years. But this beauty is the new view editor, modernized, really simplified. As you can see, you can have all your rows on one canvas with the basic actions right above them. You can add fields more intuitively with the plus button directly above the enabled fields. Left panel is really simplified and more approachable. Sometimes you want to achieve exactly this view. And until now, you had to manually set each row for a specific screen resolution and set how many columns it should have. Now, the automatic grid layout functionality automatically calculates how many columns should be on the screen and will display you this nice view. And the next thing is resizable cells, automatically resizable cells, which can be used instead of anchors. So now the base difference is that as you place these fields in a configurator, now the gap between the fields stays always the same, and only the size of the fields is changed. Now, let's talk about some of the new functionalities. Entity usage is a function we placed in every entity. Now you can check, really practically check, where all your fields, enable fields, are used inside of your entities, either if it's some rules or some row script or anything. Now you have the nice overview where it is used. And also you have an option to disable unused fields, which can be really helpful because it can improve the synchronization times also, the less fields you have enabled in the entities. And let's conclude with another new functionality, which is Data Model Explorer. This provides you with a nice overview of all your enabled entities, how many fields you have enabled for this entity, basic information about the synchronization strategy, conflict resolution, and the basic properties of this entity. Thank you very much. And I'm giving back word back to Marek.
Thank you, Martin. So I'm back. This time I'll talk about the new features in our mobile app. It's hundreds of them, in fact, but I'll just choose a few of them. And I always encourage you to follow our previews and follow our release notes where you can find all the details. So I'll just focus on for me, the most interesting ones. So first it is context awareness, which means it's great if you have a mobile app that knows where you are and can act upon it. So to streamline your frontline processes with location-based automation, we have two features which are somehow similar, but on the other hand quite different. I'm going to spend a few minutes explaining this. So location tracking is oldie but a goldie, and geofencing is a new one. So what is location tracking? I'll try to explain, or maybe I'll just show you a picture because it says 1,000 words. So if you need this, if you need to know where your frontline workers are, what are their routes, what are their paths, that's why you use location tracking. So periodically in the background, your application tracks the routes, and it's nice if you need to have a control over dispatching, auditing, and monitoring your people in the field. But, there's a but. It's always running in the background, so it takes a considerable amount of battery from a device. It produces a lot of records, because every minute, for example, you have a new audit record saying where this device was at the time. And since it's regular, it can miss certain important moments. So if this is what you need, go for location tracking. In fact, what you don't know, but we've worked quite a lot on this because security is a thing, especially I'm looking at you, Google. So we have to always and constantly improve it and fix it because new versions of Android have more and more restrictions and we have to be more and more creative to do this. So that's one of the things that Resco does for you. It's still location tracking, it still works, and we work hard for it to work. So now it's optimized for the new operating system versions, both iOS and Android. Geofencing is a new thing. It's very related, but it's mostly if you have a location-driven process automation that you need to employ. The difference between location tracking and geofencing is that it's only active in the designated areas that you can configure. So it creates much fewer records. So if you're not interested of where your employee or your mobile worker is all the time, you just need to know if she arrived at the location, at what time. Geofencing is for you. It creates much fewer records. It has a minimal impact on the battery because we are using the embedded features of the mobile operating systems. And it's very reliable, detecting arrivals or departures. So anytime you come into a geofence in the circle around the point that you choose, the user will get a push notification, open the app, and it can, in a case, the user is online, and for example, there is some background process on the server that just updated the record because of the check-in functionality. It will automatically ask you to sync or go online, work with the record, and then you can implement any process automation. What comes to mind normally is a check-in functionality or informing the customer, okay, your service technician arrived. So this is available in any use case. It's not just field service. It's any use case that you can implement with Woodford. It's also available for no-code and low-code. So no need for JavaScript. Another thing is, well, OCR, optical character recognition, or to put more simply, you can extract text from photos. That's basic, of course. Sometimes you want to do it. We had it for questionnaires in the previous release. Now it's always on the mobile forms. So it's not just questionnaires now for inspections, checklists, and campaigns. It's basically any standard or custom table where you can just streamline data entry on the mobile device. It's very easily configured. It's just one checkbox, as you can tell, and one control where you store the image. You don't have to take image all the time. Sometimes it's just one image, and then you can choose which of the fields you want to use on a form. So definitely, it's great for some use cases. Again, it's available in the low-code and no-code automation. So definitely check it out. So that's enough from me. There's tons of other features, but what is really good and very important, and Martin and Matej will tell you more about, is how our improvements in, you tell what?
Mobile performance, yes. Hi everyone, thanks Marek. Yes, I would like to share the current state and the innovation regarding mobile performance, Resco. Yes, indeed, like we, for many years, have been the leader in this field, and we constantly try to get better and better and to have better performance for our mobile application, because we understand the value that is data availability that it brings for mobile workers, for our customers, and we understand that the effectiveness of field workers, if it's critical for your business, then there cannot be any compromises. But how to build a mobile app that will run smooth and provide always the data that you need? What we see is maybe the biggest challenge is to create the right data model inside the mobile application. It needs to be a reflection of the server model, but it's not easy because there is no one model to fit them all. There's no one model that you can create and will work for everyone. In the ideal world, you would be able to select just a few hundreds or maybe a few thousands of records that are essential for the work of the field worker. But in the real world, there's a problem that our customers bring their own legacy data models on the server, and these are usually very big, and they were not designed particularly with mobile in mind. So you need an application, and that's the advantage of Resco, that can support even these large data models without the need to redesign the data model on the server and the processes, and this can be, of course, very costly. With Power Apps, the offline is a feature which they have added a few years ago, and we can really see that they are really making it better every day. They have moved like really greatly from when this started, and but it's still slower than the synchronization in Resco, and the configuration is much less complex. This can be an advantage if you have more simple use case, because you need to deal with all these bells and triggers and checkboxes in Resco. But if you have a more complex scenario, you'll find that this is a must. Microsoft also states some limitation, as for example, you should not take more than 200,000 records into your offline database. And from our perspective, what's kind of missing is also the tools for monitoring and analysis of the performance. On the other hand, Resco was built to support big databases, and we have rich configuration options, and also the tools for monitoring and for making your synchronization better and better for this fine-tuning. Some of them were just introduced by Martin, because data availability for mobile workers is our top and remains our top priority. That's why I'm very happy to introduce to you a new download method we have just developed and which is available in the new release. It's basically a new type of connection between Resco, our mobile application, and the database in Dataverse. It uses this TDS endpoint. TDS stands for Tabular Data Stream, and basically it lets us connect to more basic level of the database using SQL queries, and Right, it's much faster. That's the main point. So what exactly are these performance improvements? For many years with the web API, so with the current method, we had used this metric of 1 millisecond per record, which was considered good download speed. You could be something better in some cases, but it can be also much worse. So 1 millisecond was considered okay. But with TDS, we are able to get to 0.1. So this is really extraordinary improvement. It means that in 1 second, I can now download 100,000 instead of 1,000 records. So it's, we also tested it on a lot of our customers' databases, like with real data and with real sync filters. And we were able to get to average of 5.6 faster speed of download. I can give you 2 more examples of these customer databases. In the first case, we were able to get 2.5 million records in just 2.5 minutes, which is, again, extraordinary. And in the other case, we were able to get a full sync improvement from 76 to 15 minutes. So we are really happy to share this new feature in our upcoming release, the 17.1. And you can try it out and share what improvement it brings to you. It can either be enabled directly in the application, just for the one device, or you can enable it for the Woodford for the whole project. As this is something new, we recommend to test it, and maybe if you find something, share with us. Right. Next thing I would like to talk about regarding this innovation is regarding incremental sync strategies. You may know that we have several incremental sync strategies for different kinds of scenarios. There's the standard sync, which will sync all changed records, but sometimes that can be too much, so we want to limit it. And there is the incremental with sync filter, which will only sync the changed, but also they need to match the sync filter. In other cases, we want to download a bit more because, for example, the record itself was not changed, but the related record was changed, and I need this record now in my offline database. But still, there can be some gray areas. I'll give you an example. Imagine that today I'm here, and my manager assigns to me an appointment on the 20th. So that's more than 2 weeks from now. And my sync filter is set to the upcoming 2 weeks. So appointments for the upcoming 2 weeks. And if I sync today, after this was assigned, I will not get this appointment to my offline database. That's clear. But if I sync again on first day, I will not get it either because the appointment was not changed since the last synchronization. So this creates what we call the sliding time window problem, and it's pretty common for the field workers who have some scheduled work. And there need to be strategies how to still get that record, for example, to set a full sync on that specific table or other alternative strategies. But what we are working on now is this discover new step, which will create like a bulletproof sync, which will never miss any record and will just be enabled by one check mark for any entity. So if you find that you have these kind of problems, either with a sliding time window, but also with other kinds of inconsistencies, you can enable this, and it might not perform better than the standard sync filter, but it's crucial for some scenarios, exactly like the one I have shared. So it's, again, a valuable additional to the toolkit of our mobile offline configuration. How exactly it works? Basically, if you enable it on the entity, we will run additional query where we get just the minimal records matching the sync filter, meaning we will only download the GUID or the ID column. Then we will compare the IDs that we already have in the offline database with this new. And if there is any new, so if we discover some new records, we will download them like the full columns. Yes, so just to conclude from me, the new TDS download is here now, and you can try it out. Now we are working on the Discover New step, which I hope will be available shortly. And then we plan to work on Smart Sync, which is basically also like a new kind of sync that will let you allow just like a partial refresh sync, let's say. For example, if you're out there in the field and you don't need to download your attachments right now or the product list or something, you just want to refresh your bookings and the related records, this should allow you to do so. And that's all from me, and I invite Martin on the stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Matej, for clarifying how the latest advancements in sync performance can unleash and boost the productivity of abusers. One particular area of our portfolio where the size of data and the structure of data matters and impacts the performance and productivity is the questionnaires. Before I introduce you the latest additions to questionnaires data model, let me briefly and quickly describe you a few terms we use when talking about questionnaires data model. So the first term is template dependency. When the questionnaires were first introduced, the questionnaires were, as we call them, self-explanatory. What it means? That you could process, execute, and report every answered questionnaire without the need to have the template. In fact, you could discard the template after you created an instance of the questionnaire. But there was a cost for that. With each and every answered questionnaire, you needed to copy all the static, same data over and over and again. So the size of the data was really huge. We overcome it with the concept we call a template dependency. That's when you require a template so you can process the answered questionnaire. But the size of the data was dramatically reduced. So that's the first term. The other one is what we call a record-based or JSON format, because it's not just about the volume of the data, but also about the number of records, as my first speaker presented. Previously, every time you answered a questionnaire, for each answered question, there was one record in a table. So if we do a simple math, if you have one questionnaire with 1,000 questions, you have 100 field workers filling up, let's say, 100 questionnaires a day, you end up with having 10 million records in a database. And that's not what we wanted. So we overcome it and we come with a solution. Now you can have a whole answered questionnaire stored in form of JSON in one single field. And with the coming release, we added another feature that helps and improves the data model of questionnaires. We call it separated answer storage, or in other words, you can now have the answers stored in distinct entity. So the templates are stored in entity 1, and the answers are stored in different table or entity. So what are the benefits? First, template requires a lot of fields that hold the definitions like labels, descriptions, the rules, JavaScript, styles, and so on. You don't need it with answers. You might need or end up with just one field where you store this serialized JSON, right? The more important part is that now, since we have separated templates and answers, you can create simple sync filters or even define server-side permissions. This wasn't the case before, because once you had templates and answers in one entity, you were not able to create those rules. Because templates are for everyone, but answers might be needed just for users that created the questionnaires or with their business unit. So we can use this power of server to help us. There is one more limitation, but we see it as a benefit. Record-based storage is not supported. The fields and answers are stored in one particular field. We added few improvements to question groups as well. First, what is a group? Group is a set of questions with common rules, with a label. You can collapse enable it. Then there is a repeatable group. Repeatable group is a group that can be filled multiple times. For example, you have inspector going to inspect assets. And once he finds an issue, he wants to take a picture of that issue, describe it, maybe set a priority. Should he find 3 issues, he needs to fill 3 groups. Until now, because of the template independency, we always require to have at least 1 repeatable group in asset questionnaires. That's because you needed a definition of that group. But now it's not, you can have 0 repeatable groups if there is no issue with the asset. The other improvements is the group scoring. In Resco, in questionnaires, you can create a scoring, evaluate each question, and once the user fills in the questionnaire, the score is automatically calculated. You can define a matrix with the ranges of scores and human-readable labels. Example, not good, not bad, not terrible. Then you can analyze only those questionnaires that were, for example, terrible. Now it's possible on a group level as well. So now you can control the flow. If the group score is 10, you can go display group A or group B and so on. Until now, I was talking about boosting productivity of users we call app users. But in Resco, there's other kind of users. We call them app makers. For questionnaires, those are the people that are creating the questionnaires. And we want to boost them as well. So like in Mobile CRM and Woodford, you can define a set of rules or custom logic. You can handle onload, oncreate, onsave, oncomplete rules. And those rules are pretty flexible, but can, as you've seen on Martin's slide, can get pretty complex as well. So to eliminate this, we came up with a concept of smart rules, a dedicated editors serving one purpose. For example, setting the question's visibility, or when the question is required or read-only. Another feature we added, we find out that a lot of app makers were creating rules with a lot of steps for updating and creating records, and then filling the fields depending on the questions. To make it easier for them, we came up with a concept called data mapping. With data mapping, you define a source, usually a record from a lookup question, or record that is related to questionnaire. And then in UI, you just click and define a binding between the question and the field of the record. However, this way you were able only to update records until the latest preview. And I want to take this opportunity and encourage you to check and try our monthly previews so we can get a feedback, fine-tune them before they land up in the final release. So in this case, users are able to create a new record when the questionnaire is saved. So when the questionnaire is saved, you can define that the new account will be created, associated with the lookup, and then you can do the data mapping. As with every release, we also aim to update the questionnaire designer. In this release, we added option to add questions and groups inline. We modified the UX a bit to make the navigation easier. And the one option I like most is you are now able to set the property of multiple questions at once. But there is more. Before I leave this stage, I want to announce you that at Resco, we try to keep the pace with the latest technologies. So we decided to rewrite part of code, the questionnaire player. So it will be built on a modern technology stack. What's important, we don't want to have it dependent on a Woodford. Right now, if you want to execute questionnaire player, somehow you need a mobile project in the background. So we don't want the player to be dependent on Woodford. We want to look modern and flexible. And what's maybe most important is that we want to design it once, deploy anywhere. Right now, inspections can be integrated in Resco Mobile CRM. Model-driven Power Up from Microsoft, in Dynamics, Dataverse, in Power Pages as well. But imagine having it in Canvas app or in Microsoft Teams. Can I say Salesforce? Yeah, so I'm thrilled to announce that we are working on this, and I'm looking forward to present you the outcome of our effort in the next Resco Next. That's all from me. Thank you.